I'm Jasmine, 32, female. I live in a moderately sized city, in a house I thought was my home, and I work a job I genuinely love as a university admissions officer. My life was built on careful planning and quiet stability, a direct contrast to my younger sister's chaotic pursuit of internet fame. The centerpiece of my quiet world was a small, secluded cabin nestled in the woods 2 hours away, a property I bought with the inheritance my grandmother left me. That cabin was my sanctuary, my fortress of solitude, until it became the stage for a betrayal so profound it dismantled my entire reality, starting with the moment my husband walked through the door during a party I never knew was happening. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The cabin wasn't just wood and nails, it was a legacy. When my grandmother passed, she left me a modest sum, enough for a down payment on a sensible condo or a new car. But I wanted something that felt like her, something quiet, sturdy, and filled with peace. I found it in a listing for a 2-bedroom cabin bordered by a state forest. The air there smelled of pine and damp earth, and the only sounds were birdsong and the rustle of leaves. I spent months pouring my savings into it, refinishing the floors, painting the walls a warm cream color, and furnishing it with cozy, second-hand treasures. It was mine in a way nothing else in my life had ever been. My husband, David, had been supportive, at least on the surface. "It's a great investment, Jas," he'd said, kissing my forehead as I signed the closing papers. "A perfect little getaway for us." The word "us" was where the trouble began, a tiny crack in the foundation I was too happy to notice. David was a real estate developer, a man who saw everything in terms of value, assets, and leverage. My sanctuary was, to him, another property in a portfolio. He was charming and ambitious, the kind of man my family adored. He was handsome, successful, and he treated me well, or so I thought. My sister Isabel was another matter entirely. 5 years my junior, she lived her life through an Instagram filter. As a lifestyle blogger, her reality was a carefully curated collection of borrowed aesthetics. She saw my cabin not as a home, but as a backdrop. "OMG, Jas, this place is so rustic chic. Can you imagine the content I could shoot here?" She'd squealed during her first visit. She didn't see the hand-sanded countertops. She saw a flat, lay for sponsored granola bars. From the beginning, they both treated my cabin as a communal space, the family cabin, Isabel would call it in her posts. David started suggesting we host his work colleagues there for rustic networking retreats. I pushed back gently, trying to guard its sanctity. "It's my quiet place," I'd explain. "It's where I go to decompress." They would smile and nod, promising to respect my wishes, but the requests never stopped. The pressure was subtle but constant, a gentle, persistent erosion of my boundaries. I was the responsible, accommodating one in the family, the one who always smoothed things over. Saying no felt like a betrayal of my role. The week it all fell apart, I had to travel for work. My university was hosting a series of recruitment fairs on the opposite coast. It was a stressful but necessary trip, and I was already looking forward to spending the following weekend at the cabin, alone with a stack of books. As I packed, David wrapped his arms around my waist. "Gonna miss you," he murmured into my hair. "The house will feel empty. I'll only be 5 days," I reminded him, smiling. "Try not to burn the place down. No promises," he joked. "Maybe I'll have a quiet weekend myself, go up to the cabin, do some fishing." The idea gave me a slight pang of unease. I pictured him there without me, filling my quiet space with his loud phone calls and ambitious energy. "I'd rather you didn't, David. You know how I feel about people being there without me. It's my one rule." He held up his hands in surrender, that easy, charming smile spreading across his face. Okay, I get it. Your temple. I won't disturb the sanctuary, promise." I believed him. I kissed him goodbye at the airport, checked my bag, and settled in for the long flight, my mind already occupied with student applications and presentation schedules. I felt a little guilty for my possessiveness, but the cabin was the only thing in my life that felt truly, unconditionally mine. My house was ours, my finances were tangled with David's, my family life was a web of shared obligations, but the cabin was my sovereign ground. I had no idea that while I was 3,000 miles away, my borders were being breached in the most egregious way imaginable. The first few days of the work trip were a blur of conference rooms and forced smiles, By the third night, I was exhausted. Collapsing onto my sterile hotel bed, I did what most people do to numb their brains after a long day. I scrolled through social media. I followed a handful of lifestyle bloggers, mostly out of a professional curiosity to understand the world my sister so desperately wanted to conquer. I was tapping through the Instagram story of a mid-tier influencer, someone whose feed was an endless parade of beige outfits and aspirational brunches, when I froze. She was posting a video, a shaky pan of a room filled with people laughing and dancing. In the background, a stone fireplace roared, my fireplace. My heart hammered against my ribs. I sat up, bringing the phone closer to my face. The influencer, a woman I'd never met, pivoted the camera and my stomach dropped. There, hanging above the mantelpiece, was the amateur watercolor painting of the lake I'd bought from a local artist. There was my worn navy blue armchair, the one with the slight fraying on the left arm. On my hand-carved coffee table, a dozen empty bottles and glasses were scattered. This wasn't a similar-looking cabin. This was my cabin. My breath hitched. The video continued. The camera found a group of people doing shots at my kitchen counter. And in the center of them, holding up a bottle of expensive tequila, was my sister, Isabel. Her laugh was silent on the video, but I could hear it in my head. Loud, performative, and utterly careless. She was wearing a sequin top that glittered under my carefully chosen Edison bulb lights. I felt a wave of nausea. My hands started to shake. I tapped forward through the story. The next photo was a group shot. At least 30 people crammed onto my porch. They were raising their glasses, smiling for the camera. The caption read, "Cabin vibes with the best crew. THX for the invite at Belly Off Ball." Isabel's handle. She had invited all these strangers into my home. I clicked on Isabel's profile. It was even worse. Her grid was filled with professionally shot photos of herself posing in my cabin. Her, lounging on my bed in silk pajamas, a tray of croissants beside her. Her, sipping wine in my clawfoot bathtub, surrounded by sponsored bath bombs. Her, leaning against the ancient pine tree in the front yard, with a caption that read, "So blessed to have a family getaway like this to escape to. #cabin life, #family first, #blessed. My sanctuary had been turned into a set, a prop for her vapid, curated life. Fury, cold and sharp, cut through the shock. I immediately called her. It went straight to voicemail, her chirpy, recorded voice grating on my last nerve. I called David. He answered on the second ring, his voice slightly slurred. "Hey, honey, everything okay?" The sound of loud music and chatter echoed in the background. My blood ran cold. He was there. He was at the party. "Where are you, David?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "Oh, just out with some friends from work." He lied, his voice a little too loud, a little too casual, celebrating a deal that just closed. "You know how it is." "Really? Because it sounds like you're at my cabin." I said, the words tasting like acid. There was a pause. The background noise muffled as he clearly moved to a quieter location. "What? No, of course not. Why would you think that?" "Don't lie to me, David. I'm looking at pictures of it right now. I see Isabel. I see dozens of strangers, and I hear you. You're there. You're having a party in my home after you explicitly promised you wouldn't." He sighed, a long, suffering sound that set my teeth on edge. "Jasmine, calm down. It's not a big deal. Isabel just wanted to have a few friends over. It was a last-minute thing. I came to make sure things didn't get out of hand." "A few friends, David. I'm looking at a photo with at least 30 people in it. You lied to my face. You promised me you would respect my one rule. Look, we can talk about this when you get back," he said dismissively. "You're overreacting. It's just a house." "It's not just a house," I yelled, my voice cracking. "It's mine, and you have no respect for that, or for me." "I'll have everyone out of there in an hour, okay? We'll clean everything up. You won't even know we were here." He said, his tone meant to be placating, but it only fueled my rage. He didn't get it. He would never get it. This wasn't about a messy house. It was about trust, respect, and the deliberate violation of the one boundary I had ever set for myself. He had not only broken his promise, but he had also lied about it with sickening ease. As I hung up the phone, the world felt tilted on its axis. The image of Isabel holding court in my living room, and the sound of my husband's casual deception played on a loop in my mind. I booked the first flight home for the next morning. My work trip was over. I was going back to reclaim my territory and to confront the strangers who were living in my house. The flight home was excruciating. I spent 6 hours suspended in the air, my fury simmering at 30,000 feet. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flashes from Isabel's Instagram, strangers dancing on my antique rug, wine spilled on my wooden floors, my husband smiling in the background as if it were his own party. I landed with a headache and a heart full of dread. I didn't go to our marital home. I drove the 2 hours straight to the cabin, the tires of my rental car eating up the asphalt. I arrived as dusk was bleeding through the trees. From the outside, the cabin looked deceptively peaceful, but as I got closer, the signs of the party were everywhere. Beer bottles littered the bushes. Cigarette butts were stubbed out on the porch railings. My welcome mat was smeared with mud. My stomach clenched. I reached for the spare key I always kept hidden under a loose stone by the back door. My fingers scrabbled in the dirt, but the space was empty. The key was gone. A new, colder fear trickled down my spine. They had found and used my hidden key. I used my own key to unlock the door, my hand trembling as I pushed it open. The smell hit me first, stale beer, smoke, and something sickly sweet. The warm, pine-scented air of my sanctuary was gone, replaced by the ghost of a frat party. The inside was worse than I could have imagined. My cozy living room was a disaster zone. Cushions were thrown on the floor, one of them stained with a dark red liquid that I prayed was wine. Glasses and plates were piled on every surface. The kitchen was even more chaotic. The sink was overflowing with dirty dishes, and a sticky residue covered the counters. A deep scratch ran across the surface of my rustic wooden dining table. It felt like a physical blow. Each item I had lovingly chosen and cared for was now just part of the collateral damage of their good time. I walked through the rooms in a daze, documenting everything with the camera on my phone. The bathroom mirror was cracked. One of my grandmother's delicate, embroidered hand towels was missing. In the master bedroom, my bedroom, the sheets were rumpled and smelled of a cheap perfume I didn't recognize. On the nightstand, next to my well-worn copy of Pride and Prejudice, was a man's silver watch. It wasn't David's. His was a black leather strapped thing he never took off. This one was sleek, modern, and expensive. Who had been sleeping in my bed? The thought made me feel physically ill. I backed out of the room, my skin crawling. This was more than a party. This was a complete and utter desecration. I tried calling David and Isabel again. This time they both answered, their voices laced with a practiced, almost bored apology. "Jasmine, I am so sorry," Isabel began, her voice dripping with faux sincerity. "It just got a little bigger than I expected. We were going to clean it all up today, I swear." "We were on our way there now," David added, his tone smooth and reasonable. "We'll handle everything. You shouldn't have cut your trip short. You lost the right to tell me what I should and shouldn't do when you lied to me," I retorted, my voice flat. "Whose watch is on my nightstand?" And David. The line went silent for a beat too long. "I have no idea." He finally said, "Must belong to one of Isabel's friends. You know how her crowd is." He was already deflecting, shifting the blame. "And the spare key?" I pressed. "It's gone." "I have it," Isabel piped up. "I borrowed it a while ago and forgot to put it back. See, no big deal." Every word they spoke was a lie, a flimsy patch on a gaping hole of deceit. They were working together, their stories neatly, if transparently, aligned. They thought they could manage me, smooth it over with empty apologies and feigned ignorance. They had no idea who they were dealing with anymore. The accommodating, peacemaking Jasmine had left on that flight to the coast. The woman standing in the wreckage of her sanctuary was someone new, someone forged in fury and disillusionment. As I was about to hang up, my eyes landed on a piece of paper sticking out from under a stack of magazines on the coffee table. It was a receipt from a high-end electronics store in the city, dated 2 weeks prior. The items listed were a top-of-the-line laptop, a drone, and a virtual reality headset, purchases totaling nearly $10,000. The payment method was a joint account. An account David and I had opened years ago for home renovations, but had barely used since. An account I thought had a balance of less than $100. My name was on the receipt, but the signature at the bottom was a sloppy, unfamiliar scrawl. "I have to go," I said abruptly, and hung up before they could spin another lie. I looked at the receipt, then at the defiled room around me. The missing key, the stranger's watch, the unauthorized party. They weren't isolated incidents. They were symptoms of a much deeper disease. And I had a sickening feeling that I was about to uncover the full extent of the rot. The electronics receipt was the first loose thread in the tapestry of lies David had woven around me. The 10,000, Dollar charge was shocking, but it was the use of that specific joint account that sent a chill down my spine. It was an account he knew I never checked. My first call was to my best friend, Olivia. She was a paralegal at a corporate law firm, and her mind was as sharp as a scalpel. I explained everything, my voice a tight, controlled monotone as I detailed the party, the lies, the watch, and finally, the receipt. She listened without interruption. When I finished, her response was immediate and chillingly practical. "Jas, you need to pull the statements for that account, now, and not just that one. Check everything you share with him, credit cards, savings, all of it, and don't tell him you're doing it." Her words galvanized me. I spent the next few hours on my laptop at the scratched dining table, the stench of the party still hanging in the air. What I found was a systematic financial bleed. For the past 6 months, David had been making regular, substantial withdrawals from the joint account. Thousands of dollars at a time, moved to an account I didn't recognize. He had also opened 2 new credit cards in both our names, cards I had no idea existed, and had maxed them out on lavish dinners, designer clothes, and what looked like hotel stays in our own city. The total debt he had secretly accumulated under my name was staggering. Well over $50,000. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My husband, the man I trusted with my life and future, had been financially gutting me behind my back. The charming, successful real estate developer was a fraud, and he was using me as his personal bank. Olivia came to the cabin the next morning. She took one look at the mess, another at my pale face, and handed me a large coffee. "Okay," she said, her voice firm. "This is bad, but it's just money. We can deal with the money. What I'm worried about is the property." "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "David's a real estate guy, right? He knows how to move assets around. We need to check the deeds, for the house and for this cabin. The cabin is mine, Olivia, solely mine. It was my inheritance." "I know," she said gently. "But let's just be sure. Let's make sure he hasn't done something stupid." She used her firm's access to the county's property records database. We started with our marital home, the one we had bought together 5 years ago. My name should have been on that deed alongside his. It wasn't. The property was listed under David Morgan, a single man. The screen blurred in front of my eyes. That can't be right," I stammered. "I was there. I signed the papers." Olivia's expression was grim. "He must have had you sign something else, or forged your signature to have you removed from the title. Jas, he has been planning this for a very long time. He was isolating your assets from his so he could protect his own." The betrayal was so immense, so calculated, that I couldn't wrap my head around it, but the worst was yet to come. Olivia typed in the parcel number for the cabin. My name appeared as the owner, just as it should. I felt a small, fleeting moment of relief. Then Olivia's eyes narrowed. "There's a lien," she whispered. "A what?" "A lien. There's a financial claim against your property, it looks like." "Oh, Jasmine." She turned to look at me, her face full of pity. "He listed the cabin as collateral on a business loan." The world tilted and went gray. Business loan. The world tilted and went gray. David had taken out a massive loan for one of his failing development projects, a project he had told me was a wild success, and he had used my cabin, my grandmother's legacy, to secure it. He had forged my signature on the loan documents, effectively gambling my sanctuary on his failing business. The loan was in default. The bank was set to foreclose in less than a month. Suddenly, everything clicked into place with sickening clarity. The extravagant spending, the secret debt, he was trying to maintain the illusion of success while his professional life crumbled. The party wasn't just a casual disrespect, it was a final, hedonistic blowout. He and Isabel were having one last hurrah in the cabin before the bank took it. They were literally dancing on the grave of my inheritance, and Isabel, she must have known. The expensive gifts David had been lavishing on her, the trips, the designer bags she flaunted on social media, they were bought with my money. She wasn't just a thoughtless sister, she was a willing accomplice, benefiting from my husband's deception. Her loyalty had been bought and paid for. I sat there in the silent, trashed cabin, the full weight of their conspiracy crushing me. They had conspired to steal my future. David was going to let the bank take my cabin to erase his debt, and then he was going to leave me, the single man, with the house and all the assets, while I was left with nothing but his credit card bills. A strange calm washed over me. The shock and the grief receded, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. They had underestimated me. They saw me as the quiet, accommodating peacemaker. They had mistaken my kindness for weakness. They had no idea the lengths I would go to protect what was mine. They had wanted one last party. I decided I would give them one. But this one would be on my terms. The plan came to me in a wave of icy clarity. They had used my cabin for a party of deception. I would use it for a party of truth. Olivia was my co-conspirator, her legal mind providing the structure for my emotional need for justice. For the next 2 weeks, we worked in secret. Step 1 was for me to become the best actress of my life. I returned to our marital home and played the part of the forgiving, if slightly wounded, wife. When David saw me, he wrapped me in a hug, his face a perfect mask of contrition. "Jas, I am so sorry. It was a stupid mistake. I should have never let Isabel talk me into it. I was hurt, David," I said, allowing a tremor in my voice. "You broke my trust." "I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life earning it back." He promised, his eyes sincere. It was a masterful performance. I almost would have believed him if I didn't know about the mountain of debt and the foreclosure notice waiting in the wings. I treated Isabel with a similar cool disappointment. She delivered a tearful Instagram-worthy apology about getting carried away and wanting to show off to her friends. I accepted it with a sigh, telling her it would take time for me to get over it. They both relaxed, believing they had successfully managed the situation. They thought my anger was just about the party. They had no idea I was a walking, talking time bomb. While I played the part of the docile wife, Olivia was working miracles. She found a shark of a divorce lawyer who specialized in financial fraud. We gathered every piece of evidence, the bank statements, the credit card bills, the forged loan documents, the property deeds. We had a complete, undeniable picture of David's long con. The lawyer confirmed that the forgery on the loan documents would not only nullify the bank's claim on my cabin, but could also lead to criminal charges for David. The centerpiece of my plan was the cabin itself. I told David and Isabel that the whole incident had soured my feelings for the place. "It's just too much to manage," I said with a sigh one evening, swirling my wine. "And after what happened, it doesn't feel like my sanctuary anymore. I think I'm going to sell it." David's eyes lit up with a predatory gleam he couldn't quite hide. My selling the cabin was the perfect solution for him. The bank would be paid off, and he wouldn't face any consequences. He readily agreed. "I think that's a wise decision, honey. A fresh start for us." Isabel was equally enthusiastic. "Oh, Jas, that's sad, but I get it. We should give it a proper send-off." And there it was, the opening I was waiting for. "You know what? That's a great idea," I said, my voice bright. "We should have one last family gathering there, a final housewarming, or I guess a house cooling, to say goodbye to the place and clear the air. We'll invite the whole family, aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone." Their relief was palpable. They thought this was me extending an olive branch, a way to publicly forgive them and put the whole unfortunate incident behind us. They eagerly helped me plan, suggesting a caterer and drawing up a guest list. They were planning their own victory party, completely unaware that they were the guests of honor at their own execution. The day of the party arrived, a crisp, sunny autumn afternoon. The cabin was spotless. I had hired a professional cleaning crew to erase every trace of their debauchery. It looked exactly as it had before, peaceful, warm, and inviting. My family started to arrive, filling the space with laughter and conversation. David played the gracious host, his arm possessively around my waist. Isabel flitted from group to group, accepting compliments on how her cabin had been spruced up. They were triumphant. Olivia arrived last, giving me a subtle nod. She had a briefcase with her. Everything was in place. I waited until everyone had a drink in hand and the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows through the pine trees. I clinked a glass for attention. "Hi, everyone," I began, my voice clear and steady. "Thank you all so much for coming. As you know, I've decided to sell this cabin, and I wanted to have one last gathering with the people who matter most to say goodbye to a place that holds so many memories." I saw David squeeze my arm, a proud smile on his face. He thought this was his victory speech. I wanted to share a few of those memories with you all. I continued, gesturing to a large TV screen we had set up. A little slideshow I put together. I clicked a button on a remote. The screen flickered to life. The first few images were innocent enough. Pictures of my grandmother, photos of my family visiting the cabin over the years. Then the tone shifted. The next image was a screenshot from the influencer's Instagram story. My living room, filled with strangers. A murmur went through the room. I clicked again. A picture of Isabel doing shots on my kitchen counter. Her face paled. Another click. the group photo on the porch, a sea of unfamiliar faces, as many of you know. I said, my voice dropping the warmth and adopting a steely edge. David and Isabel hosted a party here a few weeks ago without my knowledge or consent. They called it a small get-together. As you can see, it was anything but. The room was silent now, all eyes darting between me, David and Isabel. David's smile was gone, replaced by a look of dawning horror, but a secret party is the least of what's been happening. I said, my gaze locking onto my husband. This party was meant to be a last hurrah, because David has been hiding something from all of us. I clicked the remote again. The next image was a bank statement, with the $10,000 electronics purchase highlighted. Then another, showing the massive cash withdrawals. Then the maxed out credit card bills, all under my name. Gasps rippled through our family. For the last year, David has been embezzling our shared finances to fund a lifestyle we couldn't afford and to cover his failing business. Isabel started to cry, a pathetic, gulping sound. David grabbed my arm. Jasmine, stop. Don't do this here. I shook him off. I'm just getting to the best part. The final slide appeared on the screen. It was a copy of the loan document, the one where David had forged my signature to use my cabin as collateral. Next to it was the foreclosure notice from the bank. My husband was planning to let the bank seize my grandmother's legacy to pay off his secret debt, and my sister Isabel knew the entire time, happily accepting gifts bought with money stolen from me, they were going to let me lose everything. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by Isabel's sobs. The faces of my family members were a mixture of shock, disgust, and disbelief. The truth, in all its ugly detail, was laid bare for everyone to see. The grand unveiling was complete. In the deafening silence that followed my revelation, David finally found his voice. It was a choked, desperate sound. She's exaggerating, he stammered, looking around at the sea of accusing faces. It's a misunderstanding, a business issue, it's complicated. It's not complicated, David. I said, my voice cutting through his pathetic defense. It's fraud, it's theft, and it's over. That was the cue. As if on schedule, there was a knock at the door. I walked over and opened it to reveal a uniformed locksmith and a burly man holding a clipboard. I stepped aside to let them in. What is this? David demanded, his voice rising in panic. This is the locksmith, I announced to the room. He's here to change the locks on my cabin. I then turned to the other man, and this gentleman is a process server. The man stepped forward and handed a thick envelope to David. David Morgan, you've been served. David stared at the papers in his hand as if they were a venomous snake. They were divorce papers. Attached to them was a temporary restraining order, preventing him from coming within 500 feet of me or the cabin, and an emergency motion, filed by Olivia's firm, to freeze all his personal and business assets pending a full financial investigation. The color drained from his face. He looked from the papers to me, his eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and pure hatred. You can't do this, he whispered. I can. I replied, my voice unwavering. I am. You leveraged my home. I am leveraging the law. Isabel, who had been huddled in a corner, finally erupted. How could you do this to us, Jasmine? We're family. You're destroying our lives over a stupid house. Her words were so breathtakingly selfish that a laugh escaped my lips. A stupid house? The stupid house was my inheritance, a gift from the grandmother you barely remember, and you two treated it like your personal playground and ATM. You talk about family. You don't know the meaning of the word. Family doesn't forge signatures. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't conspire to ruin one of their own for personal gain. I turned to my assembled relatives. I'm sorry you all had to be here for this, but I wanted you to see the kind of people you have been defending and enabling for years. The charming, successful man and the beautiful, popular girl. This is who they are when they think no one is watching. My aunt, my mother's sister, was the first to move. She walked over to Isabel, her face etched with disgust, and simply said, I am so ashamed of you. One by one, the family members began to file out, casting looks of pity at me and contempt at David and Isabel. They left in a quiet, somber procession, the party ending not with a bang, but with the grim finality of a funeral. Soon, only David, Isabel, Olivia, and I remained, along with the locksmith who was methodically working on the front door. Get your things, I said to David, my voice devoid of any emotion. Whatever you brought with you, your belongings from the house, my house as it turns out, since you so cleverly kept my name off the deed, will be packed up and delivered to your parents' address by the end of the week. He just stood there, speechless, clutching the divorce papers. Isabel was wailing, a garish display of self-pity. My career is over. Everyone will know. You've ruined me. You ruined yourself, Isabel, I said tiredly. You made a choice. You chose his lies over your sister. Now you get to live with that. The locksmith finished his work and handed me a new set of keys. The click of the new bolt sliding into place was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of my life being secured. I held the door open. It's time for you to go. David finally looked at me, his eyes burning with a rage that was terrifying in its intensity. You will regret this, Jasmine. No, David, I said, meeting his gaze without flinching. My only regret is that I didn't do it sooner. He and Isabel stumbled out into the twilight, two disgraced monarchs cast out of their stolen kingdom. I watched them go, not with sadness or lingering affection, but with the profound relief of a prisoner tasting freedom for the first time. I closed the door on them, on my old life, and on the woman I used to be. The locks had been changed, and in that moment, so had everything else. The aftermath was messy, as explosions always are. The divorce was brutal and protracted. David, true to form, tried to fight me on everything, claiming I had driven him to his financial desperation, and that he was entitled to half of everything, including the cabin. But the evidence was insurmountable. The forged documents were his undoing. Faced with the threat of criminal charges, he finally capitulated. The court awarded me the cabin, free and clear, along with a significant portion of the assets from the marital home he had tried to hoard for himself. His legal battles and the public nature of his fraud caused his real estate business to implode. His reputation was shattered and his investors pulled out. The last I heard, he was living in a small apartment, trying to rebuild his career from the rubble. Isabel's fall was more public, and in some ways more poetic. The story of the cabbing gate scandal, as some of our cousins called it, leaked out. Her carefully crafted image as a wholesome, blessed lifestyle guru was annihilated. Her followers, who had once adored her aspirational content, turned on her viciously. She was branded a fraud, a mooch, and a traitor. Her sponsorships dried up, and her follower count plummeted. She was forced to abandon her influencer career and get a real job. For the first time in her life, she had to stand on her own 2 feet, without me or my assets to prop her up. My family was fractured. Some relatives couldn't forgive me for airing our dirty laundry so publicly. They preferred the comfortable lies over the inconvenient truth, but most of them, once the shock wore off, sided with me. They saw the depth of the betrayal I had suffered and respected the strength it took to fight back. My relationship with my parents became strained as they struggled to reconcile their love for both their daughters, but in time they came to understand why I had to do what I did. As for me, I found a peace I had never known. I sold the house that had never really been mine and bought a smaller place in a quiet neighborhood, a home that was mine and mine alone. I poured my energy into my work, earning a promotion, and I strengthened my friendship with Olivia, who had been my rock through the entire ordeal. In the cabin, I kept it. For a while, I couldn't bring myself to go there. The memories were too tainted, but one spring afternoon I drove out, the new keys feeling solid and real in my hand. I walked through the rooms, which were no longer filled with the ghosts of betrayal, but with the quiet promise of a new beginning. I opened all the windows, letting the fresh, pine-scented air chase away the last of the shadows. I spent that weekend alone, reading by the fire, walking by the lake, and sleeping more soundly than I had in years. They had tried to take it from me, to turn my sanctuary into a symbol of their deceit. But they had failed. I had reclaimed it. It was no longer just a legacy from my grandmother. It was a testament to my own resilience. Sitting on the porch, a cup of coffee in my hands, I watched the sun rise over the trees. My life was quieter now, smaller in some ways, but it was authentic. It was mine. I had changed the locks on my cabin, but in doing so, I had also changed the locks on my life, barring the door to those who would take, use, and betray. And in the quiet solitude of my own making, I finally found the key to my own happiness.